we've got a strange issue. We know that add Ponka to image handler is being called successfully by the worker process because it's actually adding Ponka to the images. But for some reason, even though we call image post arrow mark as Ponka added, which sets the Ponka added at property, and then this arrow entity manager arrow flush, it doesn't seem to be saving. So you might wonder, do I need to call persist on image post? Let's try it. This arrow entity manager arrow persist image post. In theory, we should not need this. You only need to call persist on new objects that you want to save. It's not needed and normally does nothing when you call it on an object that will be updated. But what the heck? Let's see what happens. Oh, but before we try this, we need to do something very important. Find your terminal, press Ctrl-C to stop the worker, then restart it. Bin console messenger :consume. Why? As you know, workers sit there and run forever. The problem is that if you update some of your code, the worker won't see it. Until you restart it, it still has the old code stored in memory. So anytime you make a change to code that a worker uses, be sure to restart it. Later, we'll talk about how to do this safely when you deploy. Let's see what happens now that we've added that new persist call. Upload one new file. Find your worker, and yep, it was handled successfully. Did that fix the entity saving problem? Refresh the page. Yikes! What just happened? The image shows up twice. One with the date set and one without. To the database. Select star from image_post. Yeah, this one image is on 2 rows. I know because they're pointing to the exact same file on the file system. The worker somehow duplicated that row in the database. This is a confusing bug, but it has an easy fix. First, let's look at things from Doctrine's perspective. Internally, Doctrine keeps track of a list of all the entity objects that it's currently dealing with. When you query for an entity, it adds it to this list. When you call persist, if it's not already in the list, it's added. Then, when we call flush, Doctrine loops over all of these objects, looks for any that changed, and creates the appropriate update or insert queries. It knows whether or not an object should be inserted or updated because it knows whether or not it was responsible for querying for that object. By the way, if you want to nerd out on this topic more, this list is called the identity map. And it's just a big array that starts empty at the beginning of each request and gets bigger as you query or persist things. So now let's think about what happens in our worker. When it deserializes the add Ponka to image object, it also deserializes the image post object that lives inside. At that moment, Doctrine's identity map does not contain this object because it did not query for it inside this PHP process from inside the worker. That's why, originally, before we added persist, when we called flush, Doctrine looked at the list of objects in its identity map, which was empty, and did absolutely nothing. It doesn't know it's supposed to save the image post. When we added persist, we created a different issue. Doctrine is now aware that it needs to save this, but because it didn't originally query for it, it mistakenly thinks that this should be inserted into the database as a new row instead of updating. Phew! I wanted you to see this because it is kind of hard to debug. Fortunately, the fix is easy, and it touches on an important best practice for your messages. Include only the information you need. That's next.